welcome to Green Fashion Dialogues, the official podcast of the STARS project. I'm Simona Vettore, junior expert in circular economy and your host. STARS is part of the Erasmus Plus program, co-financed by the European Union. In this episode, we'll be speaking with Sara Kovic, founder of the Belgian-based startup Okret, which supports fashion companies in integrating circular economy practices into their business models. Together, we'll delve into the crucial yet often underestimated topic of effective communication for sustainability in fashion. With the constant risk of greenwashing, mastering how to communicate sustainable practices is key to elevating both brand integrity and consumer trust, especially for smaller brands. Let's dive in. Welcome, Sara. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Hi, thank you, Simona. I'm fine.
So today we'll dive into a topic that I believe is crucial in the fashion world, yet often underestimated or misused, that is communication and marketing tools for sustainable fashion brands. But before we get into the details, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself and share a bit about your professional background in the fashion field.
Yeah, I started working in the fashion industry some years ago, completely spontaneously, within corporate buying of a big multinational fashion group. And I grew through supply chain and due diligence to more sustainability management. I have done sustainability management for various fashion brands and the group itself, where I learned more about the ugly side of the fashion industry and everything that we don't get to see on this side as consumers, let's say. And it motivated me to start digging deeper to more concrete sustainability, argumented and reliable data, circular business models, and so on, which led me to founding Okret, my current startup, where we help fashion companies to integrate circular business models by offering them the necessary knowledge, digital tools, and operational support to close the linear value chain and manage their products and their whole organizations of today into the new economy, let's say.
Okay, and yes, we will talk about Okret later during our conversation, but now I would like to start with the main topic, that is greenwashing and communication tools. So greenwashing is a significant issue in the fashion sector, often driven by marketing. Could you explain greenwashing and whether it's limited to fast fashion or seen across also luxury brands?
I don't agree that greenwashing is being led by marketing. I think greenwashing comes to exist when you don't have enough information. And that's just a typical freestyling practice within fashion companies, where marketing departments are just trying to do best what they do best, and that is make interesting, engaging marketing calendars and drive conversion. And when you lack information in your supply chain, when you lack intelligence on your own product, then you start inventing things up. And that's how we come to greenwashing. So I don't think it's necessarily marketing driven. It's just a result of a typical gap in communication between product development, design and product development departments and departments that are supposed to market these products. And because today we are doing a lot of things in sustainability in an unregulated market, there is enough space for interpretations. And what marketing departments are doing with the knowledge that they have, they start making up stories. And I think this is, for me, greenwashing, when you are communicating about information you cannot back up and you don't have technical information for or proof for, then we are talking about greenwashing. But it comes as a result of the whole company. It's a very nice picture to see how brands perceive their own products and how they manage their own product intelligence and information. And then if you see the symptom of it, can be a badly written sustainability report or a badly written story in a season, then yes, we point fingers to marketing departments. But I think we're all equally responsible. If a company is greenwashing, then all the colleagues down the chain are, contributing a bit.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. But sometimes, or I will say many times, most of the time, greenwashing and information related to sustainable product and things like that, it's also a way to increase the price of to the final consumer. So when brands engage in greenwashing and all information related to sustainability, even if there's no true sustainability under their production, they can increase short-term sales, and this may impact consumer trust and the perception of genuinely sustainable brands. What do you think about it?
I think this is a very complex question. I'm gonna try to split it in smaller ones. I think when companies start greenwashing is because we generally have this basic awareness now in the broader public that sustainability is somewhat important. We see the consumer behavior is changing, and we have some feeling the consumer is reacting more and more to sustainability related topics. So and we want to stay relevant as a brand. So we start filling up marketing calendars with sustainability related information. Because we miss the actual information, because we don't have systems in place to be collecting and analyzing data in the way the data should be collected and analyzed, and we start freestyling. And when we start freestyling is because we have made a couple of assumptions on the way, and that is what our consumer actually wants to know, what we actually can give, and what our product is actually worth. So we start basically trading with these intangible values that we all kind of feel is coming and becoming more and more important, but we still don't really understand and cannot quantify or put our finger to where we should actually start. So I think long-term gains probably are there. You can be praised for a good marketing campaign. You can be getting some current media attention with smart campaigns. I think people who are deep enough in the matter, in the sector, they see through it. You also see when something is representative for the scale a company is operating in. If a huge market leader gets every now and then a capsule collection on the market of eco-friendly or whatever greenwashed products, you can easily see through based on volumes, based on positioning and so on in how representative this is, and then even start digging whether this information is actually so reliable and real. I don't think this is what the main target of greenwashing. I think when you start greenwashing, companies are secretly knowing actually we are not following this train and we want to stay on this train, and so you start you start jumping as soon as possible on this train with whatever you have in petto at the moment, and probably that's not a lot, so you start filling the gaps of things that you don't have. And I think that's just because we see the big boys throwing with new keywords, the legislation is coming, the market is being defined, consumers are asking for more transparency, but also the consumers don't know clearly what are we actually asking for, and then in all of this ocean of information and in the rat race of fashion that it is today, it's very difficult to understand what's the real thing. And then people start talking a bit of everything and waiting to see the reaction from the other side, I think, what their consumer is going to react to. And in all of this, I think we are getting a bit lost. Fashion is becoming an awkwardly synthetic combination of creative processes, cold processes, predictable processes, and completely unpredictable emotion. And in all of this, I think companies are trying to stay relevant with what they know and what they can. And actually, as an industry, we are integrally under pressure to completely reinvent ourselves. And for me, that's also the game of greenwashing. We are just telling the story we learned how to tell, in a linear way, in the same way we know how to tell stories. We put a good campaign on it, we make good pictures, we pay our PR agency enough, and then we wait for it to spread in the media. And this is just not how it's working anymore. So that's why greenwashing. But there is so many variants of these freestyle techniques of different companies, and for me, they're all greenwashing if they are telling a story that they can tomorrow not pinpoint and black and white prove it's actually happening, and they don't have systematic structural sources of primary data to maintain these claims, basically. So it can be very small thing. It can be a wrongly placed green label. Yes, that can be greenwashing, but it can also be everything you do on sustainability management now. If it's really not carried by your supply chain, by your partners, by your stakeholders, then it's also greenwashing. So the impact on longer, short term is also connected to that, I think. Yes, it can give short term in hype, in media hypes, in positive positioning at the moment, but it's never going to last if you cannot maintain it. So we should not be that worried about the short term ones. I think there is a lot of funds that are getting like a very bad damage on a long term and on a bigger scale that we should be concentrating on, and actually working towards the consumer to just better filter through all of this information, because we will never be able to control each company and each sustainability claims to say whether that's greenwashing or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all have in mind like H&M campaign or Primark campaign when they say, yeah, we are launching our new, more organic brand collection with organic cotton and things like that. But if you go and read the target, you just understand that there's no cotton in that product and it's all polyester, and so the promise is too vague and not true at the end. So we actually pinpointed the wrong way to communicate sustainability. So now let's move to the right side of the tool. And what are the essential elements for effective communication for a small sustainable fashion brand? How can a small fashion brand communicate sustainability effectively, also on a limited budget? Too difficult.
I don't think so. I mean, I do what I do also because I believe honestly it doesn't have to be difficult. We are making it difficult to protect the big boys where it really is difficult. I think sustainability as we know it, and then I think we really need to define what we are talking about before we start analyzing, is so broad. It became such a dump word for many things. But if you talk about sustainability as in responsibility of these companies to maintain a certain balance and treat with respect the people and the planet that are involved in their processes, then I would say sustainability is much more difficult for big companies that grew in a linear system and bloomed in the rawest capitalism as we know it, than for small companies that are just starting now, or companies that still have somewhat of a controllable supply chain. And there I mean a supply chain where you have suppliers, tier 1 from your direct suppliers and CMT suppliers to printing houses and going further into the supply chain, all together coming above a number of 100. I think that's still a pretty easy to manage supply chain and pretty easy to get, pretty achievable to get control over. I would say every company starts with a good analysis of own value chain and then supply chain as part of it, to say what are we making, what is the product we are bringing on the market and why. Is this product solving something today that is not solved yet. Is this product contributing anyhow to the society and where we want to go and where we are going within this change? And if yes, what are the biggest impacts of our operations? And when you analyze the biggest impacts, of course, the biggest impact is going to be around your own product creation. And in the product creation, you're going to look onto different fields of sustainability to see which kind of information do I have, do I need to have, and do I want to communicate about. But I think if you down all of these phases don't know your why or why you're doing it, then it becomes a very painful game that nobody likes, not the sustainability manager of the company, and especially not the small companies that don't even have enough people to operate the value chain, let alone the extra that sustainability today is. I would suggest a very simple thing, and that is go back to your core, understand how your product can make the world a better place. And if in the end you don't have any positive or extra purpose of making a fashion brand, but it's just for the sake of creative expression and because you want to create and bring fashion products to the market, then there is a simple due diligence flow you can follow to make sure that your operations are not contributing to extra negative effect, even though if they may be, and pretty surely, not creating any positive effect, that you can still just like limit your negative effect of your own production, of your own supply chain or the materials you use and so on. And I would always suggest just start communicating about that. I think all of us, many of us, started companies also 50 years back with the noblest goals of them all, and that is to help people feel okay, be wearing some clothes, express themselves, and then make it approachable for everybody. And we came to the verge of a system as it is that it cannot continue existing like that anymore. Smaller designers, or especially starting designers and brands, in my eyes today, don't have the challenge of how do we help people get dressed and how do we make this approachable for the big massa. Now they have the responsibility of how do we integrally examine the way we produce and consume to create new values. And that can be much shorter route than in a big company where you need to reinvent yourself completely, where you grew on a linear capitalistic value chain and now you need to put in question every step you have in your operational flows that are working and that are the revenue stream for the survival of your company. So I think smaller companies have less partners, less risk to maintain, and if they have an original story and can show actual value behind their products, even if it's not all kind of eco-certified, that value still has value to the people, and that value should just be translated in a transparent and honest story. And I think that's where you start. And once you start to translating your story to a neutral story that an average consumer or a spectator can understand, you start looking at other stuff that is, for example, how can I back up my claims with some neutral certifications, or how can I do collabs or collaborate with other ecosystem partners to show that I'm actually serious about this. But all of this is not as important as it is that you are at any point able to further explain, dive deep, and show all kind of details you are putting in the front world are actually happening in the back office. I think that's it. You just have to make your own system, be able to treat people with respect, treat the planet with respect, and be able to show it is more than enough at this point. And I think is going to be the thing that is going to make the change in the amount of information we have today. You have also all kinds of negative effects happening. All the certification companies that in their own lobbying routes came to their own challenges are not that neutral anymore, are not that transparent anymore. So you can go down many rabbit holes. I think the essence remains the essence, and that is the product has to be good. It has to have quality. It has to tick basic boxes on eco-design level. And then it has to have a nice transparent story that you can stand behind as a human being. And I think more, you really don't need more at this point as a small company.
Thank you. That's a hopeful message for small brands. But we all like lists. So do you have any key metrics or indicators that small brands should focus on to measure the success of their communication strategies?
Well, any success of communication strategy, I think, is measured in the engagement towards the target group. So I would suggest to start with that. I have a feeling a lot of brands are indeed trying to stay on the circularity train or trying to jump on it, but they don't know really how or why. I would start with, before any action, simple communication towards the target group to understand how you can still serve them best or better than what you're doing now. And that's also partially, completely applicable for sustainability related topics as well. You will first have to understand, what does your target group look for in your product? Why do they shop from you? And how can you make this experience and product better for them? And I would definitely involve them. So I would say dialogue for me is the crucial word at this point. I think we need to... Circular economy is the economy of integral collaboration. I think we need to absolutely remember who the most important stakeholder at this point is, and that is the end consumer. So if we don't include the end consumer in the brainstorm phase of all of these great campaigns that we are putting, then the chances are we are shooting blanks. I would start with communicating there, and then forward on, I think authenticity and the shared purpose for me remain the biggest or the most difficult things to still have. And that's what you see in the big chains, is the first thing that gets lost. People cannot connect or feel connected with impersonal storytelling. That's something that is very in line with what smaller brands do have and can play into their advantage. I think honesty, technically correct information, and or transparency or controllable information in combination with authentic story is unbeatable at this point. No certification in the world can beat that, and I would really advise to smaller brands to just focus on this. I think the biggest role we have as fashion brands in the upcoming 5 to 10 years is to unlearn what fast fashion taught us, and to teach the end consumer the value perception of textiles that we lost it completely in the past years. Our biggest role now is to explain to the end consumer how much work it enters to creating a fashion product or a fashion collection or a brand, and then how much work it takes in the back office that you never see from the point of the consumer before you see a piece in a shop or in a web store. And to make them understand that, I really believe is gonna be the driver to change the behavior. While we are shopping fast fashion, we are shopping because somebody taught us you can be shopping jeans for 10 euros and believing a story about how sustainable it can be. There is primary neutral data that shows that this is simply not possible. It's now the role of fashion brands to creatively go translate this information that we all know from the back office to the outside world, to create a consumer that is actually conscious before they can make conscious choice and think. And for that, you really don't need a lot. You need to involve the stakeholder, involve the end consumer in your process from the beginning, and not only in the sales point.
Okay, so checkable data, transparency, but also storytelling, and probably a reconnection with the end craft and the value behind the product itself. So the work made before the product is sold. And could you share any example of a campaign or brand that communicates practices well?
From a small brand, you mean, or in general?
Also in general.
I was always inspired by how Reformation was doing it. it was one of the very commercial brands in America that dared to start communicating about sustainability in a very authentic, blunt way. Also, when they didn't have the perfect picture to show, and I think that's a really good example. Nobody is expecting at this point of time for you to have all the puzzles ready to be presented and for you to understand completely what sustainability or circularity is all about. What's really valued, I think, is when you don't know, admitting it and saying it, and or being transparent of the ways or the techniques you organize in order to achieve this information. And that's what Reformation, in my eyes, have been always doing well. Engaging consumer content, engaging language completely in line with the identity of the brand, and telling how it is, praising the good things they do, of course, and putting it clear on which steps still to take when they are not doing it as good. So I think for me that remains a universal example of how you can still be in the process of something, but just very, very smart with your communication to still achieve this positive effect that you're actually looking for. I think, of course, Philippa K has been very good in doing it in the past years as well, but that's like a bit bigger company. What I liked on Philippa K is when they didn't have answers on their own or within one company, they have started building this community, and that's what's another super important thing I think within circular economy is there is so many stakeholders to manage. If you don't start building a community, you're just still doing linear talks and wanting to make a circle. I think there is so many different fields to work on that it's difficult to say this is the one good example. There is mostly various companies who do different things in a good way, or what you can deduct from there, of course, is that nobody has capacities to do it all well, so you will also have to choose based on your own capacities and your own company how to remain as close as possible to your target group and to your client, and as close as possible to yourself and to your core. And where these two intervene is probably where you're going to invest in the type of story and the channel you're going to use to tell it. But these two, for me, they're examples that I use when I need to show to other people how I would do it. So I think, yeah, I mean, there is so many examples now, I cannot choose. Okay, but I think Reformation is good to give as the example, and then we cut all the rest. I mean, you can keep Philippa K, but there is a lot of local examples that I would put in Belgium and the Netherlands, where you just show, there was this lady, I always take her as an example. She was making mohair. It's a type of wool. And she was doing it because she had 4 Angora goats. Yes, mohair comes from Angora goats. She had like 4 or 5 Angora goats in her garden, and she had superior quality of mohair, but she could never compete with the international chains and certifications of RFS and so on throughout the big companies. But what she did was go and document this story, the goats in her backyard, the process with her own hands and stuff like that. It was such a powerful story that makes you move whether you want it or not, and that's what you actually want to achieve. You want your story to move the target in an emotional way, or in a way that wakes up some kind of activist in you, or some kind of I want to contribute and help. I really believe here there is no one size fits all. If I would have to give advice to a random audience or a mass, I would just say really try to find your core and stay true to yourself, because that's going to be the next battlefield. In the sea of AI-generated content and semi-right certification, I don't think you can do differently and not go crazy. So this is my advice.
Okay, so there's no solution that fits for all, but anyone should find their own voice and their own way to tell their story behind this product. And but if we need to find something that we need totally to avoid, what will be?
Speak when you don't know what you're talking about. Really, then just stay quiet. Staying quiet is not good, but if you're not ready at this point to talk out loud about how unprepared you are for everything that is coming, and I'm pretty sure that's still the case in 99% of the fashion companies, how the market is evolving and changing, it's super confusing. There is a lot to understand. Not all the companies have money to pay armies of consultants to help them figure it out. It's all understandable. If you're not sure, then don't speak, and just speak about what you're sure about. And please concentrate on the primary data, because that's pretty achievable for every company. Every company has their own reach, knows where they buy resources from. If not resources on the level of raw material and finished fabrics, then resources on the level of ready-made material. There is in every fashion company internal stakeholders that can help make a coherent story, and first in line external stakeholders or business partners that can help you finalize this story. There is 3 working fields you can be talking on level of your own product, your own organization, and what you do for the broader society. Choose one of these 3 where you make the most impact and start there, and try to find neutral or data that can be controlled according to neutral protocols.
Wise words. Thank you. And let's move to the Okret project. That is a service-focused business supporting fashion brands, as you said. Could you explain how Okret collaborates with apparel companies to develop communication strategies that authentically reflect sustainable values and effectively avoid greenwashing?
Yeah. Well, like basically we start like what I just described, figuring out what is the size that fits them. There is some broadly applicable truths, and there is some company specific information or messages that need to be translated. We always start with Okret being the one-stop shop to integrate circular business models. You always start with figuring out where the gaps are in internal capacities and organizing in priorities in how to fill these gaps. And communication is always one of the top prios. Where I think you have to be smart is figuring out how you can work on both communication, which in the logical order of things comes in the end of a process after you did something amazing and then you want to communicate it. While you're still doing all of these amazing things and you don't have concretely what to communicate, I think that's where the dialogue takes part, and you want to understand how can you engage the stakeholder you're actually doing it for to provide valuable input for what you're still going to be organizing, and actually just create a communication loop there that often don't exist. What we are really good in fashion companies is put all of our thinking in the product development phase. Once the product has been developed and we have placed the orders and produce, we sell and we lose the customer completely. And that's where Okret looks before you start setting up take-back systems or anything of resell or repair or whichever circular business model. Who is your audience? Who do you want to activate? With which goals? And what kind of language are we supposed to be talking about? And then what is the way of translating very complex industry tools like a digital product passport, let's say a good example, to the end consumer or in the consumer-oriented communication? You're supposed to translate to the consumer-oriented communication in a way that can engage them. And where I'm really trying with Okret to make a difference is you see now the rising trend of companies publishing their sustainability reports and all kinds of sustainability initiatives. And what they a lot of times fail in is translating information that is interesting for different stakeholders for these stakeholders. So what we do is we are a member of some kind of an NGO, or we have to make a sustainability report because we are on a stock exchange or because we are obliged by whatever. And we think that our end consumer is equally eager to go read all of this technical information about our company as are our business partners, our investors, or so on. So in setting up complex systems like take-back systems and recurring revenue, deposit money, and so on for these companies, I really find it important to look with the companies what is going to be the end result and who is it interesting for, while we are working in the back office to actually set this up, to keep communicating with the target group about the preferred way they want to see this happening, so that we would have representative pilots, let's say. It's all about, in the end, seamless collaboration between product development and marketing department, where you have to make a link via a person or a tool that technically correct information is getting translated into a more simple language, let's say, but still can be equally correct and more engaging than just dry technical information that we would read in the product fishes. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, or just
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, this connection between the product office and the communication office. So this is very interesting. And we talked about the advice of not talking, not telling something that you are not sure about. But do you think there are other common mistakes that small sustainable brands make usually?
Yeah, well, a lot of people are making it, not only small sustainable brands. That is, we are throwing with keywords. We are throwing around with keywords without having defined what these words should mean or mean. One of the examples is the word sustainable. I am a semantics freak, so this really bothers me. But we are using a word that means everything and nothing to describe everything and nothing, and this makes a recipe, perfect recipe for a disaster, and there is a lot of communication gaps and a lot of new space for interpretations. I would say it's the one basic task of marketing to avoid greenwashing is making sure every text they publish or all the content that goes outside is has been checked by product managers, is technically correct, and then they can work on the right tone of voice, but not other way around. We cannot be getting tips from our SEO department of what the keywords are trending on Google so that we can make our content on our websites and our reports. And I think if you just take neutral technical information that is correct, you can back it up and you have systems to show that this is traceable and you have proof for it. There is almost no shame, no negative effect you can reach in just translating it into a nice to read text. And that's basically what we need to ensure, that there is this internal flow of communication flow before the communication goes to the external stakeholder. Marketing departments don't write sustainability texts. Sustainability managers and product managers should be writing sustainability texts. Should be I know it's a bit of blah blah, it's a bit of cliche today, but sustainability should be in the DNA, and if it's not, then it should be part of every department, assign kind of a horizontal support to all kinds of silos, and should be actually acting as a glue of connecting all this different information, making sure it fits into one holistic picture of the product and the organization, and then handing it on to marketing to market it, not the other way around or in another order.
Yeah, I understand. So when we think about fashion communication, it often shifts responsibility to consumers. Do you believe it's truly consumers' responsibility only, or is it a way to divert accountability from brands?
I don't think it's only consumers' responsibility, but I do think consumers' responsibility is very high, and I do think consumers are not taking the responsibility they should be taking. And I know this big monster of a rotten capitalistic system we live in creates two groups. One is the companies that still are based on that and are just trying to survive, so they're always going to continue praising this system. And the other one is the angry consumer and some kind of a new revolution in existing, where people go to the other extreme, and that is we as consumers don't need to do anything. We just need to consume and know it's good. And I think in order to arrive there, we are switching the system completely. So in order to arrive there, we need to work with tools we have today and with capacities we have today, and that is both producing and consumer capacity has to stand behind their own part of the new system and new responsibilities and kind of pave the way to it. That just means that consumers cannot keep consuming at the tempo and at the prices that they are used to today, thinking it's normal and expecting the new system and new world to be created but still fits the same old frames. It's simply not possible. It also means that the consumer cannot avoid going to therapy to solve all of their personal or life problems, but can go to the main commercial streets to spend the monthly budget there. Or like, we have to go back to the core, understand what is fashion, high fashion as a matter of creative expression, commercial fashion. What does it serve for? It's in the end and one of the basic human rights, let's say, and growing towards some kind of a more arts system. And in all of that, there is different consumers as well. So each consumer has to understand whether they wear clothes and whether these clothes are simply in a form follows function mode. Are these clothes a part of identity? Are they communicating something with their clothes? And so on. And once you understand that, and you understand what kind of person you are and what kind of tool fashion is for you, you make your own choices, which are like in line with this new world order we are creating. And that is saying, if you believe that we should be doing different, then you ask yourself in every step you make as a consumer whether you can do different, and you use every new choice as a chance to change something for the better, let's say. Or you get educated on what the minimum price is for a decent clothing piece in decent conditions and decent materials and so on are. There is big responsibility on the side of consumer. The consumer is avoiding because it is easier to hide as a individual against a big system. But I think also on both sides we fall a bit too fast into this Don Quixote syndrome, like I cannot do it on my own and I cannot solve it, and I'm just one small piece and fighting without results. Companies are doing exactly the same, and there you can also go see on the scale of the global scale, which are the biggest companies, how the market is split. And if you see that the market is so fragmented, that there is actually so many SMEs in the market, so many small independent designing labels and so on that are also thinking, but why would I if the big boys are not doing it? The consumer is doing the same. We are just spinning. As in every system and any change, I think there is going to be a group of consumers that are early adopters. Like, I don't know, the two of us go tomorrow and accept there is the consumer's responsibility, and we start applying it, and then we start spreading it according to our circles and so on. And the producer responsibility stops, I think, stops in the end of the life cycle of this piece, yes, but cannot be covering the use phase, let's say. That's where the end consumer is integrally responsible on how they treat clothing, how they dispose of clothing, what do they do when they don't want to wear it anymore, but it's in a good state, and how much more active actually can we get in this new system? I think those are all responsibilities of the consumer. I do agree that the big companies, in lack of better tools or more control of the market of their own supply chain, are pointing fingers at the consumer where it's not honest to point fingers to the consumers. I also think in an ideal world, the consumers indeed enter in the store, they know everything is okay and I can just shop here. That's what consumers are supposed to do. But we are in the transitioning phase, so I think the situation is a bit co-created from both sides. Without doubt, the consumer has been taught by the evil corporations, this is how we should be doing. But the fact is now we are doing this. So in order to change behavior, you start with yourself, then you dig deeper to the core problem, and the core problem is the system, and this system is contained from both producers and consumers, and then we try to make some kind of a collaborative system, or we continue pointing fingers. I'm not sure which way it's going to go, but there is definitely a huge part, and if nothing else, in the way we buy and take care for our clothes, that is purely in the hands of a consumer.
Okay, thank you. Very powerful insight. Let's close our conversation with considering new policies and regulation on the horizon, especially in the EU. How do you think sustainable fashion communication will be affected, and how can brands prepare for these changes?
Well, it will be affected. The fashion system and industry will be affected, I think, throughout the whole value chain. Of course, European Union, again, has as a goal to integrally change the core problem, and that is how we design and produce these projects. But it's going to have some kind of a spillover effect, which is also why we see the legislation like Extended Producer Responsibility Law being implemented together with the Eco-Design Directive, for example. If you look at these two legislations, one is completely very focused on the beginning of a value chain, the other one is focused on the end of the value chain. I think European Commission is hoping, like we all are, they will intervene and they will also meet and create effects in opposite directions, which is great. It could be really like that. And the other less great thing is we have saw similar laws in the past in Europe being pushed in the same way and not delivering right away the results we are hoping for. So I'm not pretty sure what to say now, and I'm also scared to be taken for my literal words in 2 years. But what we know is the Extended Producer Responsibility Law is literally extended producer responsibility, meaning you are not responsible anymore for how you design and produce your articles. You're responsible after sales and via use phase for the end of life, when the end consumer doesn't want to use these articles anymore. They don't need to have the responsibility to figure out what the best way is of disposing them, giving them a new life, or recycling them after all. And that is something that is completely unknown within fashion companies of today. That is the question of how do we process post-consumer goods? How do we take care for the products that have been in the hands of the consumer, where we did have this huge human factor and the responsibility of the consumer that we don't have touch points for, so we can also not estimate. And I think that's the biggest impact on the organizations is once your products start coming back. In a typical linear system, you don't have the infrastructure to catch them. Maybe you go make some smart partnerships with ecosystem partners and you are able to catch them. Then they start producing direct costs for your linear organization because you have never thought about recurring projects or revenues or costs. And once they start making costs, it's a very painful activity to maintain. And you're under pressure to fast figure out how to solve this, and also how to produce, earn, and so on enough in the beginning of the value chain to be able to carry all of these costs. So I think the impact is fundamental, and that is, if we are not designing and producing products that take care or take into account the effects of the end of life phase, we are failing at this point. And I think the current impact here and now is a lot of companies are still not understanding that. A lot of CEOs' jobs is to survive from today to tomorrow, so they're thinking about the cash flow this calendar year, let's say, whereas the change is coming seemingly slow, but is creating actually a lot of P&L gaps for the future. And I think the impact is you will very critically, broad and deep, have to rethink the product that you're bringing to the market in its whole, the quality, the subparts, the material of these subparts, the suppliers that deliver these subparts, and so on. To how do you produce them? To how can you produce the right amounts so that you wouldn't have the problem of dead stock or unsold collections anymore. So it asks also completely integral, critical rethinking of the way we supply. Today we put production lines and we produce easily hundreds of pieces more than what we need, or tens of thousands more than we need, just because it's cheaper to set up a production line and take care of the waste. In a world where waste is a valuable resource and it costs money to process waste, it automatically, in my opinion, brings questions to all the other phases of the value chain. Where are you going to be able to save waste creation, to manage waste efficiently, so that you can save costs, so that you can focus on this ultimate loop, and that is how can we take back the goods, recover valuable materials from there, and reuse these valuable materials for new creations, so that we can limit need for new resources in the world where we don't have these resources. And now I went to meta perspective, but I think it's necessary even for small brands to use this time when the legislation is still not obligatory and we still do have space and time to experiment, to use the time to distance from the rat race you are sitting in now, day in, day out, figure out what's important and make a long-term plan on how to survive the transition, how to reinvent the project, the process, the ecosystem, so you are still able to be there today once all of this is active. And I think it's really not that far away. We are talking about 2 to 3 years max. There
is a lot of interesting and important information to keep in mind. Thank you so much, Sara, for your time and for guiding us through this crucial and fascinating topic. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Green Fashion Dialogues. We hope you will find our discussion insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. You can also follow the Stars Project on social media to stay updated on our latest initiatives and events. Remember, together we can make fashion more sustainable and inclusive. Until next time, I'm Simona Vettore, and this has been Green Fashion Dialogues.